Welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of the Selective Mutism H.E.L.P Home Educational Learning Program podcast. My name is Kelly, and I'm a parent of a child who has overcome selective mutism, as well as a board-certified behavior analyst specializing in supporting kids and teens with selective mutism. This podcast is meant to provide general information about SM, as well as selective mutism H.E.L.P's specific events that we have going on. It is not to diagnose, treat, or to be used in lieu of help from an SM specialist. So Season 3 is going to have information from the monthly newsletters that are emailed out and shared. I know how busy life can be, trust me. We have 3 kids, each in 2 sports. Life is wild. And sometimes it's more efficient to listen to information than it is to read it in a newsletter. So I hope this format helps you all. Thank you for being here, and let's dive into the March 2026 Selective Mutism H.E.L.P newsletter. All right, so to start, I have been doing a couple workshops lately. Some of you have joined me in these, and my third workshop is coming up on March 26th through 29th is the viewing time, and this one is on anger management. So within this workshop, we have to remember that anger is not something to eliminate, but something to understand and transform. So within the workshop, I share practical strategies and mindset shifts so that we as adults can help our children grow stronger emotional regulation, resilience, and confidence. It also goes a lot into recognizing our own triggers from our past and maybe why certain things our kids do maybe cause us to get angry with them, and then also understanding where their anger is coming from. Sometimes we have to reframe their challenging behaviors as a skill deficit and not necessarily as defiance. So I know from my experience with my children, we went through a lot of anger situations, especially when our daughter was struggling the most with her anxiety. She would come home and have these outbursts. It's like, what is this coming from? And as a parent, that was triggering for me. It's like, how dare you come home and disrespect me in my house? As growing up for me, I had to follow all the rules of my home or I would get in trouble. And so here's my child acting out and could not care any more or less, I guess, about the consequences that were there. And so it was a growing process. So that's why I really am excited about this workshop, is to help those that register how to understand and interpret where their anger is coming from. Again, recognizing where our anger is coming from and creating more solutions than extra problems. So the link to register is in the newsletter, so make sure you you've signed up for newsletter, so you get that. This time around, I'm going to do it more as an on-demand viewing, so you'll have the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, and 29th to watch the webinar. It's a little over, or watch the workshop. It's a little over an hour long, so you can pause it. There's opportunities for you to write things down, take notes, do some reflecting. So you'll have those 4 days to do that. Then on Monday, March 30th, from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to hold a live Q&A. So if you cannot make that Q&A, feel free to email me those questions and I'll answer those questions within that Q&A. Or you can pop on in live and you don't have to have your camera on if you don't want to. I completely get that. You can ask your questions. We can have conversations about it. I do plan on recording that so that those who couldn't attend can have 24 hours to watch that Q&A. So I'm going to try it out this time, see how it goes. So again, the registration is in the newsletter. You can also find it on my social media, the SM H.E.L.P group, the page, or the Selective Mutism Community of Support group. So that's there. It's $30 to register. All right, moving on in the newsletter is about podcast episodes. So I already mentioned that with life being as crazy as it is, these newsletters are now going to be reproduced into a podcast so that you can listen to them instead of reading through all the content. Make sure that if you are listening on the podcast to hit follow so that you can get an alert or notification when the next episode is released or the next newsletter is released. I'm going to try my hardest to do it monthly. Again, lots going on with the kiddos. So if it's every 6 to 8 weeks, that's what it is. But I'm going to try to do it monthly. So again, this is the March newsletter. the end of March, I realize, but it's still in March. All right, the next section of the newsletter is Ask Kelly. So the questions that I get a lot, I like to put in this section. So if you have questions for me ever, feel free to reach out, send me an email, smhelp2020@gmail.com, and send me a question, and it might be aired on the podcast. Okay, so this month's question is, how can I support my child to move beyond a whisper? All right, here was my response written in the newsletter. Our kids work so hard to be able to get a sound out, and it's such a huge step for them to get the whisper stage. But sometimes they can get stuck at that whisper stage. They can answer yes no questions, forced choice questions, order their food, etc. But it can be so hard to hear them that sometimes it doesn't seem like the other person, they're not getting that reinforcement from the other person. And so some of our kids, including mine, when she was going through this, can be very black or white thinkers, and there isn't much gray in their world. So when we ask them to respond and they do, they can check that box that they responded, even if the listener couldn't hear them. So for those kids that are black or white, I like to have a tool that they can use to know for sure if they're reaching the goal that is set. One of the tools I use a lot is a decibel reader. And there's lots of free decibel reader apps that you can download for your tablets, for your phones, whichever. My favorite one is called Decibel Meter. It's very very simple. The simpler, the better for me. So then I teach the child the different types of communicating and the decibel that correlates to each one. So whisper is generally 45 to 55 decibels. Conversation volume is between 60 to 70 decibels. And then anything over 70 is yelling. So we practice getting our volume between the ranges to help them understand the effort that goes into each when they're in a comfortable environment. So at home, you can practice whispering with your kiddo, and then conversation volume, and then yelling. It's always fun to see how high their number can get. Might want to wear earplugs. I've had some kids that can yell really loud. So again, working on that in a comfortable environment and then bringing that with you if you're going out to order somewhere or if they're on a play date, you can have that decibel meter available so they can check in and say, ooh, yeah, that was only a 52. They couldn't hear me. I need to get that higher. Another thing that can help too, okay, I do have it written. Again, I'll probably be going back and forth with what I wrote versus what I'm thinking, so bear with me. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. All right. To help bring in an even deeper understanding of what their vocal cords are doing at the different levels, I have them place their hand lightly on their throat to feel the vibrations created at the different volumes. When a child feels anxious, the vocal cords tense up, and it can be extra effort for air to allow those vocal cords to vibrate. So one way to loosen the vocal cords, if again they're stuck at that whisper stage because the vocal cords are still too tight, one way to loosen the vocal cords is to hum. So they'll know if they're doing it because they'll be able to feel the vibration if they're lightly touching their throat. So go ahead right now while you're driving safely or a passenger somewhere. Put your hand on your throat and just hum. You can feel that. And then say the ABCs. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and feel the vibrations changing or feel the vibrations within your throat. Okay. So right before they say the word that they want to say, have them hum. So for example, a waiter or waitress asks them, what would you like to drink? And they answer, milk. So if you've practiced with a decibel reader, have it available so they can see what their volume was at. If they're within the range, great. So again, that humming will allow the vocal cords to relax. Excuse me. If they're not within the range, if they're maybe at a 58 instead of a 66, you can ask the waiter or waitress, did you get that? I did this a lot with our daughter, especially at the beginning as she was becoming more comfortable talking outside the home. So by asking, did you get that? You can see if the waiter or waitress actually heard them. If they say, no, I didn't, ask your child to say it again and try to get their volume up higher between that 60 and 70 decibel range. One final tip is to make sure you have the conversation ahead of time as to what goal they agree to and that they're willing to give it a try. We don't want to just off the cuff be like, okay, tell them what you want. We want to have this discussed prior to it. Asking, how hard would it be for you to tell the waiter or waitress that you want milk? And then practice, practice, practice. The more predictable it is and the more practice they do, the easier it will be for them to achieve the goal of responding at an audible volume. So if you need any support on this or any other challenge you're going through, I do offer free parent training consultations, which you can schedule by going to the link that's in the newsletter or smhelp.org/parent-training. There's an area there where you can schedule your free consultation. All right, next section I like to call is Progress is Possible. This is usually where I share a client success story. If I have names in there, they are obviously changed for client confidentiality purposes. So here is the Progress is Possible part of the newsletter. As you've probably heard, a common strategy to help a child with SM is called fading in or sliding in. As a behavior analyst, we call this systematic desensitization. Not nearly as easy to say as fading in or sliding in. Basically, we take small steps to help a child begin speaking to a new talking partner. This is often done in a school setting, but I utilize this technique in different settings depending on the needs of the child. I recently started in-office sessions with a client of mine. We had taken lots of time to build rapport. We worked on his nervous system with the sound and movement program, and now we're working on him feeling comfortable with me hearing his voice. The strategy I used was presented by Maggie Johnson at the Selective Mutism Foundation conference last fall. Here were the steps we took. I had mom and client sit across from each other at my desk. And I did this to prevent him from leaning into mom's ear to whisper. It would have been much more challenging for him to have to reach across the desk and try to whisper to mom. So I was just trying to remove that ability for him to do that. And then I told him to count with mom from 1 to 10. Mom would say 1, he would say 2, mom say 3, etc. I had the decibel reader up, and they were to notice what the decibel was when he said his number. I then told him I would be around the corner, out of sight, and once they got to 10, he would knock on the desk for me to come back. When I heard the knock, I came back, and we would color in a color by number worksheet to help us keep track of the number of times he was able to do it. The worksheet had 8 different colors, so we did this exercise 8 times. When he started, his volume was around 45 decibels, but by the end of that first session, he was in the 60s, and I could hear him around the corner in the bathroom where I was hanging out, which was amazing. The week after that, he counted on his own, and each time he was louder than the previous time. He even began telling me what his numbers were, with the loudest being 72 decibels. So mom would be like, tell Kelly what the number was, and he would tell me. It's like, oh, yay. After that, we were working on him counting with me sitting with him. So I was now present. So these activities were showing his amygdala that he was not in danger when he used his voice around me. Using something he knows very well, like counting to 10, lessened the cognitive load. Once he masters counting at a sustained audible volume, we'll increase the cognitive load by having him answer forced choice questions, such as would you rather questions, or open-ended questions like using a Mad Lib to create a story. One final key step I took into consideration during this activity was checking in with him to see how hard it would be for him to do the different challenges. If he reported something was hard, I would break it into a smaller step until he indicated it was medium hard. This increased the likelihood that he would be successful and want to continue with the various challenges. So progress is possible. And I did put in the newsletter for more information about this to listen to the podcast. So I'm glad you're here to listen because there have been some updates since I last wrote this. We were able to fade mom out. So basically what we did is the same thing when we started, except this time mom would be around the corner hanging out in the bathroom. He would knock when he's done counting. And then mom would step outside the door of where my office is to the outside and would be able to continue counting with me or counting to me while mom was outside the door. And then she would go, we live in a golf cart community, so she would then sit on her golf cart and he would knock at the window when he was done and we would do thumbs up. So we were able to fade mom out in the same way. And then we did the would you rather questions and he was able to answer all the would you rather questions verbally at an audible volume. And also I would throw in some open-ended questions in there and he was able to answer those as well. So huge progress for this kiddo. All right, next section of the newsletter is the sound and movement webinar that will be coming up for free. This is actually what the client I was just referring to did prior to our in-office sessions. I had started in person with him at home, and I noticed that there's a lot of dysregulation happening during those sessions. He would get very aggressive with his brother, not like mean, but just like little kids wrestling. He would kind of tackle his brother more. He would take footballs and throw them at my head. He would run around. He would take stuff and like hide things. So there was just a lot of dysregulation. And so I had mentioned to mom about the sound and movement webinar. Excuse me, the sound and movement program. And I will have a free webinar coming up about this program. Basically, it's to help you understand more about the nervous system, more about primitive reflexes, and how the sound and movement program could benefit your child. The webinar will be live from noon to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, March 31st. Again, I'm going to do things a little bit differently this time, and I am going to record it. Typically, I don't because I want parents to feel comfortable asking questions during it. But if people do attend live and you have questions, I'm going to end the recording at the Q&A part so that you can share comfortably the questions you have without feeling like you're sharing too much with people that are listening. So it's going to be recorded. You'll have 24 hours to listen to the recording. So it's not as long as the workshop, which is the 4 days. But this webinar, again, it's informational, and you can always set up time with me for a consultation to discuss it further. So in the newsletter, there is the link to register, or you can go to my website, smhelp.org sound-movement, and there'll be a registration form there. Okay, another thing I like to add into the newsletters, which I haven't been doing as much lately, is to add a research article section. And a new research article just came out from some of the folks that are involved with SMIRA, which is the Selective Mutism Information and Research Association, something along those lines. I always get all the little things wrong. But the research article is titled Physical Freezing in Children and Adolescents with Selective Mutism. The authors are written in the newsletter, and also the link for the full article is in the newsletter as well. But I wanted just to share the takeaways. I got very excited reading this because the physical freezing is to me an important component to look at. All right, so the takeaways I got from this research article was that most children who responded to the small-scale qualitative child survey with a diagnosis of SM only or both autism and SM reported some level of throat and body freezing. I know many of you have probably seen this in your child. I remember seeing the body freezing, especially in my child. And oftentimes when I ask older kids, where in their body do they feel a change when they're expected to speak, they will point to their throat. Another takeaway point was physical freezing of both the throat and other parts of the body may be important factors in preventing speech and movement in children with SM. But these observations are preliminary as they are based on a very small self-selected sample, and further research is needed before conclusions can be drawn, which I feel like a lot of research articles are like that. Like, we need more research. The most common reasons given by the children that increased their difficulty in speaking were pressure being put on them to talk, worries about how they would be perceived, and fear of making mistakes. So those are important things to keep in mind as we are supporting our kids or the kids in our lives with SM to begin to talk. So again, those reasons why kids have an increased difficulty is pressure being put on them to talk, worrying about how they would be perceived, and fear of making mistakes. There were some limitations to the study. The number of children completing surveys was small. 82 parents gave permission for the children to complete a survey, mainly about the physical changes within their body. However, only 30 children went on to do so. And to me, that's a decent difference. We have 82 parents and only 30 children. We're missing out on quite a few kids there. So my thoughts on this, and I was actually able to talk with the authors of this study, which was really fun, just to kind of pick their brains and have conversations around it. And one thing we discussed was the participants' level of interoception. And if you've listened to or joined any of the summits in the past, we've talked about interoception. And It's basically the awareness of the sensations that we feel in our body. And oftentimes, when I ask my clients what it feels like in their body when there is that expectation to speak, they aren't able to articulate what they feel or even know what they're feeling due to shutdown. So I think that could have been why not as many kiddos did the survey, because they didn't even know what they were feeling. In the article, the research article, the defense cascade theory is mentioned to describe the shutdown, but if you guys know me well enough, in my opinion, the polyvagal theory also describes the nervous system's shutdown. And the shutdown turns off the cognitive thinking part of the brain, and the body is simply in survival. So, therefore, our kids, especially really young kids, may not be feeling anything, and therefore they aren't able to indicate if they are feeling a physical freezing. They're they're just kind of they're not able to be in that present moment to recognize any changes within their body. So I was glad the study was released, and I look forward to more studies like this. And maybe one day, just one day, I will have my own study on this because it's fascinating to me. So take the time if you're interested to read through the article, and let me know your thoughts on it. All right, a couple last things in that I include in all of my newsletters is requests for testimonials. So if you'd like to leave a testimonial about any services you've received from Selective Mutism Help, there is an area for you to do so. Let other people know how services went for your child, what the events were like for you. If you enjoyed any of the webinars or workshops, you can put that there. And then also, I have the community of support. So if you're looking for a supportive community, the Selective Mutism Help Community of Support is a welcoming group of over 1,000 members to help you find support, answer your questions, and to remind you that you are not alone. So it is a Facebook group, it's a private group. You have to answer questions to get in, but the link is there on the newsletter for you to join, or you can search Selective Mutism Help Community of Support. All right. Thank you for listening to the first of hopefully many newsletter podcasts. Reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is smhelp2020@gmail.com, and I look forward to April's newsletter next month. Bye for now.